it brings me to AI. Obviously, computer science guy, you know a lot about it. And machine learning, there's a lot of excitement, especially with diagnostics and health. There's also a lot of dangers to it. What is your viewpoint on AI? And then for me, what comes up is, in order to navigate the information and the false realities that are going to inevitably be created or already created, honing in or cultivating or strengthening or upgrading our divine intelligence, our soul intelligence, whatever you want to call it, DISI, whatever you call it, our internal guidance system. How do we turn that volume up?
This is an amazing question. Ever since about 5 years of age, we start processing the world with our brain. And we're taught that that's how you do it. And a lot of socialization is, okay, think about it, think about it, think about it. The way the body really works is it's the first line sensors of the world are mitochondria. It's a distributed network of trillions of these ancient bacteria embedded in our cells. They're not just power plants, they're sensors. And they sense reality first. And then they talk to each other via magnetism, via photons. By the way, there's studies that say everything I'm talking about, even though you don't believe me. Via chemicals, via things like quorum sensing, and all this. You can Google. There's PhD quantum biologists who are studying how all this stuff works. And they decide what's going on, and then they pass it up into your nervous system. And your nervous system passes it up into your brain. And it's invisible to you and me, but when I do this and I clap, you think, okay, well, it took a little while for the sound to reach from my hands to your ears, and then you heard it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if we had electrodes glued to your head, we would find that the sound reached your body, and then 350 milliseconds, in other words, a third of a second after the sound hit your body allowed your brain to get the first signal there was a sound. So in a third of a second, your body decided whether it was worth letting you hear the sound. So, oh my God, you mean my body is pre-processing reality and throwing away 95% of it before it can share it with my little slow brain? That's actually how it works. What do you think programs your body on what to pay attention to and not pay attention to?
I don't know.
Trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Growing up, learning how to survive in the world. Because when you're first born, even in the womb, you don't really have that much of a clue. So if something hurts, you don't do it anymore, right? So all of us have trauma, and some of it's like little stuff. It just means when you were a kid, something really made you feel unstabilized. And it could be something your parents didn't even know. Like, you were screaming in the high chair and they didn't give you a Cheerio and you just lost your shit. Mm-hmm. Okay, it left a mark. Like, no, there's no fault in it. But stuff like that happens and you don't remember it, but it's all in there. And it influences how you feel. So if I said something that triggered you, I'm actually hitting that ancient network, and maybe I said something a bully said or something that one of your parents said, or it felt the same way. And then before you can think, your body goes, danger, and then you're going to be like, well, who do you think you are? And for every single person listening, if anything I said triggered you, it means you're carrying a loaded gun. That's what triggered is. And if I were you, I'd be kind of embarrassed about that, because it means I can control you without your consent. And you should feel a little bit unsafe because of that. And maybe you should call a therapist and get over that, because that's what grown-ups do. And that's what people who can listen to the difference between fear and intuition. And if you're really tuned in, and like I said, I had to reprogram all these systems. I spent many, many months with electrodes understanding this and studied with gurus like you have. Been around the world doing it. There's an inner knowing that happens slightly before a fear or an emotional response to something. And what we learn, especially when we're really smart and when we're career driven and we're highly successful people, we learn to ignore intuition and to go with thought. So say you're interviewing someone or you're about to go on a date, and let's say, my body's like, it doesn't feel safe, or it doesn't feel good, and like I have this feeling. But then you go, well, that's probably just nerves. Okay, that was your intuition telling you that's not a safe person, but then your brain overrides the intuition, and then you have an experience that you didn't want to have. The person was a jerk or whatever. Well, if you can learn the difference of feeling between an intuitive knowing, which is fast and clean, and then notice yourself telling yourself, let's just throw that off to the side and let's go with the thought. That's what ego does. So the more you can silence your ego the ego is just your mitochondria trying to keep you alive at the end of the day, then the more you're in touch with just knowing. And some of the greatest leaps in science have come from just knowing. And sometimes if I'm up at 2 a.m. writing one of my books, I'll just have this aha moment where I just know. For instance, in the Bulletproof Diet, I wrote about C8 MCT. There's 4 kinds of MCT oil. And the one with 8 carbons in it, it just works better. And it was an intuitive knowing and a felt sense. And so I wrote about it and said, don't have studies, but it works much better than the other ones. And 5 years later, Dr. Kinane at UC San Diego comes up with a study that shows, oh, look, it's way more ketogenic than the other ones, right? I didn't have a study. I had a knowing. And that's a very small example, but you look at, Watson and Crick and people, they just wake up and it's there. So your job is to be intuitive. The other thing that I would call out is that when you look at the way society has almost always worked, if you were to flip a coin and you have an average woman and an average man, who's likely to be more intuitive?
Woman. Average woman. Sorry.
You sexist. Oh my God, I'm so triggered. Yes, it's women. And I have a radical theory about why. Want to hear it?
I do.
Okay. If you believe me that mitochondria are environmental sensors, and they are, okay, where do they sit? Okay, in your brain, there's 15,000 of these per neuron. In your heart, there's 15,000 of them. Let's see. Do we feel stuff in our heart? Do we feel stuff in our brain and think about stuff? Yes, these are power centers. And those are the richest cells in the body, except for women. Cells in the ovaries have 100,000 mitochondria per cell. So I truly think that women have an unfair advantage in intuition. And this is one of the reasons that men and women partner really well, because it turns out men also have some capabilities that women don't have. We don't have extra mitochondria in our balls. But we can sense safety and create safety in a way that women can't, because we have bigger muscles on average, right? And there are women who could kick my ass in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and all that kind of stuff, right? But on average, like, this is how it works. So if you have someone who's like, I can handle physical shit, and someone who says, I can handle the intuitive shit, and guys, I have intuition, I've trained my intuition, it's pretty good now. But it's harder work, and the very best intuitive men, I don't think, are ever going to beat the very best intuitive women. Right? And
feels right to me.
They're different energetics. And I mean, some of the guru guys, they walk in a room and it's like Neo with ones and zeros, but you put them next to the intuitive women and they have different views of reality. But I'm going to listen to the women and I'm going to listen to the men, but I give women an edge on intuitive. So it's okay. Just how do you do it? Well, you check in with yourself and say, I think this is it. And then ask a woman who knows you well. And we all know our women who are more intuitive and more tuned into their bodies, because intuition is an embodiment. It's not a thought. It comes in through your feet. It comes in through your root chakra, and it comes in through your whole body, and you just know in your bones, and you know it actually in your reproductive system, and you know it in your heart and in your gut. And so when all of those are in line, like, that's a yes. Well, it's probably a yes, right? And if after that you go, well, it can't be a yes because, I don't like his shirt. Well, get over yourself.
Yeah. And just like you healed your brain, and it's like if we upgrade our system and our software and our hardware and our firmware, which I don't even know what that is, but I heard you talk about it. I mean, I know it exists in the computer world, but I couldn't define it. Then those signals that are put in place, the intuitive channels do become stronger. So we
turn down the fear and we turn up the electricity. More electricity, stronger channels.
Yeah.
It's like in the old days of radios. If you had a really good radio, you could like listen to a radio around the planet, and if you just had a normal one, you could just pick up the little local station. I did that when I was 12. I don't know if anyone listening still remembers that, but the idea here is that if you have a really powerful flashlight, you can see further. Like you know that there's a difference in signal strength, and I just want you to have the strongest possible ability to pick up the subtle signals from the universe around you, whether you're a man or a woman. Right? And the cool thing is, if you can pick those up, you can certainly pick up signals from another person. And I don't mean like the stuff they'll teach you in NLP or in Pickup Artist Land. And, if you look your eyes up to the right and you turn your head, I don't know, it's not my space, but, they make up all this stuff that apparently works. Those are brute force brain hacks. And what we're talking about is you can actually feel another person. And it's not with your 5 senses.
Thank you for listening to the Heal Podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. And please rate and review us so that we can grow and reach more people. Thanks so much, and be well.